and welcome to It's About Youth. I'm your host, Fana Shea. Now, for many young people today, life feels like a constant race. Juggling studies, side hustles, internship, part-time jobs, and more, all while trying to keep up with the cost of living. This endless hustle, is it really the path to success, or is it taking a toll on people's mental health, especially the youth? Now, here to talk about this are two of my guests, Hanson from ISIS Malaysia, as well as Madiha Fuad from PlusVibes. Thank you so much for joining me, both of you.
Thank you for having us.
Right. Okay, we want to talk about hustle culture and how it's affecting youth. But I think we need to paint a little bit of picture on what it is and how is it defined and how is it impacting this generation, right? So from both of your perspective, maybe Madiha, we can start with you. Yeah. How did hustle culture become so deeply embedded in how we define success today?
Well, that's a good question, right? Because when we're thinking about hustle culture, it's always, I need to do this, I need to be at a certain stage in order to be successful. But I think different people have different definitions of success, whether it's career, family, whether it's building goals or a business. As an entrepreneur myself, for me, being successful would mean my business grows every single year. But I also think the culture started to develop more because people started to have higher ambitions. They wanted more. So that means you would then think that, okay, if that person can do it, and it's visible on social media even, why can't I do it? So I want to do that too. And that's what develops this whole hustle culture that, okay, I see that person being a role model, being able to do it, okay, I want to try do it too. So I feel that's the context of it, that when it's more visible, people want to try to achieve certain things as well. But I think the key here is that it's always about the perspective of hustling. Sometimes you might think, okay, I want to achieve a certain way, but you don't take breaks in between, and that's where we lead into mental health, burnout, and then the whole struggle of, am I doing enough for myself?
Right. I mean, talking about visibility there, of course, compared to before, social media has always been a place nowadays where people are, uploading their successes and showing their lives.
And not their failures.
Not their failures, obviously. So I guess this is part of the visibility that you mentioned just now. Hanson, what about you? Especially from an economic standpoint here, what's your perspective on this?
Yeah, I think Madiha, you did a great job in painting a picture of what hustle culture looks like. I think from my perspective, what makes hustle culture so embedded within how we define success, I think there are two perspectives that we can take. One is from an individual perspective, just building on what Madiha has said. It's become entrenched because it's empowering to believe that I can achieve success by the work of my hands. But really, this perception encourages people to really blame themselves when things don't really work out. And that's how mental health crisis might arise from that. And the other perspective, I think from a societal perspective, creating this illusion or perspective that success depends entirely on your individual effort serves the interests of people who might benefit from people who buy into this hustle culture and overworking. And it also absorbs people in positions of power, perhaps, that can change some of these structural issues to avoid accountability.
Right. Okay, I want to pick a little bit about what Hanson is saying here. Some youths are saying that they are actually forced into this culture. So it's not really about, whether we want to be successful or whether, we want to keep up with our friends, for example, but they are forced into this hustle culture just to survive. So rising living costs, for example, stagnant wages, job insecurity, those are some of the stuff that we hear from youths almost daily. So Hanson, if you don't mind, from an economic standpoint here, is this pressure real or are expectations just simply higher today?
Yeah, I think some of these realities are definitely real. Just to illustrate my point, let me just give the example of perhaps buying a house, which I guess many people consider a quintessential mark of financial achievement. Before this show, I dug into some of the numbers. 20 years ago, the median house price was 160,000, sorry. And a fresh graduate can expect to earn nearly 2,000. This I dug out from a Bank Negara report that was published in 2005. If you work out the maths, the mortgage rates stand at around 40% of what a fresh graduate can expect to earn in the labor market. And right now, today, this rate stands at around 45% to 70% if you are a better graduate if you are lucky. Perhaps you can get a better job, and getting a house is not as difficult for you. And this is just considering buying a house. We haven't factored in the fact that Dawson reported in 2024, degree holders have an unemployment rate of 20%. That's 1 in 5 degree holders. And that's also, I think it points to some of the, like we mentioned, structural issues like stagnating starting wages, and also the increasing cost of living, and crucially, the cost of services that we consider important, right? Like housing, education, and healthcare.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely two sides of the coin here. Yeah, I feel like there are people who sort of entrust themselves to be in the hustle culture because they want to be successful, and they view success with a certain number or a certain societal norm. But also, like you said just now, you know, there's structural issues that kind of force a lot of youth today to have to be in this position, to have to work 2 jobs, and to have to take, you know, into consideration all this, you know, buying a house, buying a car, and how much that weighs on them. So talking about them, you know, we talk about how all these structural issues are present and how hustle culture has sort of embedded in youth today. Madiha, from a you are a mental health advocate, and you work a lot with organizations, corporates, and entrepreneurs, for example. Talk to me a little bit about, you know, the most common mental health issues you see among young people today living in this kind of situation. How do they usually show up, and at what point does ambition actually cross into the line of burnout, anxiety, or even depression, for example?
I love that question, because it's true. When we're looking at it from a general perspective of youths working in corporates, for example, the system itself, you have a 9-to-5 job, but at the same time, it's not enough. So you have to work gig jobs, or you have to work, you know, you do your passion side hustles, but in the end, you still burn out here because you're always working. You don't have time to rest. In that context, I would say many people burn out. Simply because of the expectations and the actual pressure, financial pressure and economic pressure that people have. But I'm going to flip that on the side, because being an entrepreneur and dealing with different types of entrepreneurs as well who want to grow their businesses, in the end, you know that you have to hustle a certain period of time to achieve growth. So the satisfaction then would be, okay, let me look back at my year. Did I grow or did I not grow? I think the issue here in terms of the mental health issue is not identifying the small wins and thinking that success means I'm already up there within 1 year. So that's the struggle that people have in terms of defining, okay, I'm hustling, but at the same time, I'm not reaching a certain stage. So I become depressed, I become burnout, I become demotivated, and then I don't want to continue anymore. So I think the structure here is to really reframe hustle, not as a form of I need to be there a certain way. Hustle itself isn't toxic, but it's more of the perspective that, okay, if I don't get to where I am, I can reach for the stars, but if I get anywhere near the clouds, I'm okay. Or even if I just pass a certain ceiling, I'm okay. I'm growing every single year. And I think that's what it should be about. It's about acknowledging that we're growing every single year, whether you are learning a new skill, whether you are buying a car, whether you're building a family, whatever it is, life, every chapter in our life is about growing. So I think that's the context of it, not seeing it as a failure if you don't achieve. And that's where mental health can be contained a little.
Right. So it's about, from what you're saying, taking a step back a little bit and setting maybe smaller goals. And setting maybe a little bit achievable goals, and making sure that we don't get so caught up with social media, or, you know, people who probably have a lot of head start or privileges that can get there faster, and just sort of assess the situation and figure out how you can achieve that realistically, right?
Everyone has a different journey. So aim for the stars, okay, but your path towards there, some people might take longer, some people might be shorter. In the end, it's about being happy and content with your own growth journey.
Right. Okay. I mean, I like that. I like that. All right. Okay. So if you talk about hustle culture here, we talk a little bit about, you know, the structural issues surrounding it, and how we have to sort of redefine what hustle culture is really about. I want to go a little bit deeper in a sense that we want to see, is hustle culture really an individual mindset, or is it a systemic issue created by economic insecurity and workplace expectations, right? And I think drawing to that, with the challenges that are at hand here, is work-life balance actually even realistic for today's youth if you want to talk about, you know, solving some of these challenges that are at hand? Maybe Hanson, we can start with you.
Yeah, sure. I think that hustle culture is really created by, one, workplaces that reward long hours and constant availability, and two, some of these emerging, perhaps not new, but some labor arrangements that normalize short-term contracts. I mean, we mentioned about gig work and platform work and other performance-based pay mechanisms. So I think this is also part of what we've been talking before, right, on structural issues. When wages fail to keep up with the cost of living, when stable jobs become harder to find, individuals have little choice but to buy into these narratives surrounding, you know, workplace expectations, new forms of more precarious labor arrangements. People just have little choice but to accept these conditions. And I think the danger with hustle culture really is that it can be self-reinforcing. Tough economic situations, economic insecurity encourages individuals to hustle. This hustle is then normalized and perhaps even celebrated and glamorized. But this normalization is just further entrenching a system that relies on individual overexertion. So I think thinking that hustle culture is an individual mindset problem shifts the responsibility away from employers and institutions and blames individuals for outcomes that are largely shaped by the structural constraints that they face.
Right. What's your thought on
I
this?
agree. It's a systematic issue, system issue. So I think it's more of when you're in a company, what happens is you see everyone working, you see them climbing the corporate ladder, and then sometimes you think, oh, okay, you have a colleague who in the end says, oh, I can't make ends meet, I'm about to start a family, I need to do a side hustle, a side job, and you think, oh, that might be normal. So then you then look into yourself and think, oh, what side hustles can I do? I'm really good at marketing, for example. Let me do a side business, which is I'm going to develop my own marketing agency, for example. This has become a trend. You see young people working, not just their 9 to 5, but then building their own side hustles on the side, and then feeling that, wait a minute, I'm working all the time. Where am I actually spending time to have fun, to live life, to experience new things? But then again, do they have a choice? Because when we talk about commitment, like you mentioned earlier, I need to buy a house, I need to buy a car, I need to start a family, all this costs money. And when we're thinking of it, we're sandwiched in this system where we generally don't have a choice. But now, you can see this from a different perspective, because I always believe in anything, there are two sides to it. You can stay your 9 to 5 jobs, yes, but then you don't have that certain ambition. The ambition of, okay, maybe I don't want to drive a certain type of car. Maybe I don't want to buy a certain type of house. Your 9 to 5 job, okay, fine. You can stick to it. But if you have ambition, which we see in social media, visibility and all that, you're thinking, wow, it's so fun to have that. Or maybe I want to travel here. You have ambition. That's where it translates into that hustle culture. So it relates back into an individual, what they see, what they experience, their circle, their environment. And then it goes back to, do I want that? If I want that, I have to be in this hustle culture.
Yeah. I mean, definitely, I think if we look at it, you know, overall, youths are definitely stuck between a rock and a hard place when it comes to this, right? Because at one side, the systemic issues of low wages, you know, reskilling, upskilling, or even, you know, cost of living, for example, are making youths unable to escape from the hustle culture. At the same time, there's also, like you said, the individual mindset of people wanting, or in corporate, for example, wanting to better themselves and comparing, you know, when it comes to social media and all that, and not knowing, you know, how to set smaller goals or how to achieve certain things that how to define success, right? So there's definitely sort of two groups that are experiencing hustle culture at the same time, and they're both sort of stuck in escaping them, right? Okay, I think we get the overall picture of where hustle culture is really in Malaysia right now. I think we're going to discuss a bit more about I guess solutions and also the future work that might add to these anxieties that you mentioned after this break. Welcome back to It's About Youth. I'm Fahana, and today we are joined by Hanson from ISIS as well as Madiha from PlusVibes to talk about the hustle culture that are impacting youth today. We paint a picture a little bit on what are the challenges and why and how youths are impacted by this. I'm going to add a little bit salt to this, a little bit of salt to the wound in talking about the future work and how that's going to impact the hustle culture that are befalling youth even more. Hanson, we'll start with you. So AI, automation, definitely reshaping the job market right now. Are young people today hustling for opportunities that may not even exist in the future with all this advancement?
Right. I think that's a great question. And I think there's a real sense of anxiety among young people, and this anxiety is not unfounded. At ISIS Malaysia, we recently just published a policy brief on novel AI technologies and the future of work in Malaysia. And what we find is for young people, the challenge is twofold. Now, many entry-level jobs are being exposed to automation by generative AI. We are already seeing evidence of this from the US, for example, using large-scale data that covers millions of employees. And at the same time, it's also the jobs that require a degree that will be most exposed to generative AI. So it really is like a double whammy, right? The notion that higher education and a white-collar job is the path to economic security, this notion is increasingly being challenged. And young people who are hustling with this vision as an end goal might find themselves increasingly disillusioned. But the opposite is also quite dangerous, right? And I'm thinking about people who are responding to this uncertainty by pivoting into gig work, platform work, other hustles with low barriers of entry, but potentially very lucrative short-term returns. The problem with this path, in my opinion, is that they do not build durable, transferable skills that help young people over the course of their career and over the course of their life. And the unregulated nature of these new forms of hustles, I've already talked about like worker protection mechanisms, dispute mechanisms with your employers, and social protection remains underdeveloped in these sort of hustles that people are getting into. So I think this is just how the future of work looks like for young people. It's a bleak picture, but I guess we can discuss solutions later on as well.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, if you talk about data centers, for example, we want people to be filling up these data centers, but are there enough people who are equipped to be filling up these data centers, for example? I think, we are talking about a lot of advancement in technologies here in Malaysia, but we sort of forget where people are actually and how do we reskill and upskill this to fill up, this kind of position later. So definitely an important point that you brought up. You also talk about, anxieties when it comes to future work, and I think this is where you come in, Madiha. How does this uncertainty about the future work, the sort of bleak perspective that Hanson has painted just now, affecting young people today?
Okay, so we do a lot of on-ground events, right? Mental health awareness talks, and that's where we gather data to see what are the major areas of concern, what are they feeling, and across Malaysia, we see youth struggling with self-esteem, thinking that if I'm going to graduate, am I going to get a job? What am I going to get a job in? Because if I don't know how to use AI, which right now there's dominant AI tools that people usually use, but in the end, is that enough? What other things do I need? In every single different industry, there's an AI tool that we might not have heard of. So people are thinking, okay, am I going to get a job that suits me? Am I going to be happy? Or am I going to have low-skilled jobs, right? And the high-skilled jobs are only for those who are able to access certain types of tools and knowledge. So anxiety-wise, yes, massive. But I don't want to cut it there. I also want to talk about the possibilities and opportunities, that there are so many good online courses that people can take. And the reason why I bring this up is because I meet a lot of people who do take, and I'm like, what is the certification? And I was like, oh yeah, I found it in my free time. It's a free course that I can do online to learn about this. And I'm like, wow, you went the extra mile to learn new skills. So are you hustling? I would say you are hustling to learn new skills, because you need to continuously adapt, continuously evolve. And I feel that whenever you're always self-learning, learning new things, increasing knowledge, you never lose out, because you're building, like you mentioned, transferable skills. Strong basis, foundation of discipline, adaptability, curiosity, and this kind of skills you can apply in any, whether you become an entrepreneur, whether you become a corporate, whether you do anything. So yes, anxiety is at its complete highest, but possibilities and opportunities are also there.
Right. I think Madiha has already segued into some of the solution that we're talking about. So looking at possible, upskilling and reskilling on your own in terms of addressing some of these problems that are propping up because of hustle culture. So I guess, Hanson, we can go back to you.
Yep.
Let's talk about solution. What should, we have identified some of the structural problems that exist. We have identified that youths are between a hard place, between a rock and a hard place when it comes to all this. What are the solutions to probably not, redefine hustle culture or navigate it at this point in time?
Yeah, thanks for the question, and I really like how, Madiha, you mentioned some of the opportunities that might arise and sharing some of the stories of how individuals might be looking for opportunities to upskill themselves as well. I think individuals have a part to play, but we shouldn't just place the onus solely on the individual. We should also look at how people in positions of power, policymakers can consider ways, consider certain solutions, right? And some of them that we have highlighted in the policy brief that I've mentioned before is extending social protection, thinking about currently in our social protection framework, who is missing out, who remains unprotected. Whether you are a gig worker or not, you are equally likely to be affected by generative AI if you're in the same occupation. So there's no reason why one group of workers should receive some benefits while others should not. Returning to the point on upskilling and reskilling, having a lot of online courses that people can go to is excellent. And what policymakers can really think about is, how do we align these online courses? What do you actually get at the end of it? Sure, you attain the skill, but how do you signal this skill to employers when you're actually in the job search? Are there ways to provide credentialing, or even micro-credentials to workers or individuals who have completed these courses? Can they be aligned with some of our existing qualification frameworks, the MQF, for example? Can accumulating these different credentials and skills eventually count towards a degree program? I think these are sort of the areas that we can explore in order to support people who are taking up this opportunity to upskill and to reskill. And just one last note that I just want to leave is, with the future of work, there are certain jobs that will increasingly become more valuable. Office jobs, clerical jobs, data analyst jobs, a lot of finance jobs even, or software engineering jobs can be performed by generative AI. But some of the most essential jobs in our society, for example, care workers, providing care, providing treatment, some of the nursing, for example, remain undervalued in our economy. So perhaps what we should be looking at moving forward is, how can we restore dignity, human dignity to work, so that work is not a prerequisite to your participation in society, but everyone deserves a basic level of human dignity that can be achieved through work or not.
Right, it's very nice.
Another part, I like that there are so many different ways, right, in order to build an upskill. Another part, I feel, coming from the mental health industry, coming from the whole aspect of entrepreneurs need to build community, whether you're an entrepreneur or not, I feel that being surrounded by people who motivate you, by a good networking industry or whether it's entrepreneurs or whether it's with friends who align with your values is so important, because from there you kind of get different information, different knowledge. I've been in different types of circles, different age groups as well, and you're thinking like, oh, this age group and this industry, they upskill themselves in this kind of way. They hustle in this kind of way. They relax and have coping mechanisms like this. And you learn from them. And then when you shift and go in this different age group or this different circle, they have different learning coping mechanisms. So I feel that being exposed to different types of people, different types of network, different types of opportunities will really shape your perspective in a more fuller circle, rather than being just here thinking that, okay, if I do this, I'm going to achieve this. And then when you don't achieve it, that's when you get so stressed and so burnt out and you're thinking, what am I doing wrong? But actually, it's because your perspective is just one-sided. You're not looking left and right. So when you expose yourself to more things, and then we talk about whether there's opportunities for networking, right? But I feel that if you really do search for it, there's conferences, there's community events, there's so many different things. So all in all, the hustle culture is going to be there. Yes, it will affect mental health, but how you can handle it is really your coping mechanisms, who you surround yourself with, setting achievable goals, and really structuring, okay, success for me in this chapter is like this, and this is what I'm going to do to achieve it. Whether I reach this or not, or whether if I drop down a few steps, it's okay, I'm learning. And I think that's the whole mindset that everyone should have.
Right. There's a way to manage it, hopefully with a lot of support and a lot of attention to all the structural issues, I feel.
Definitely.
Right, okay. That's all the time we have, unfortunately. Thank you so much to the both of you. Here's to a healthier, brighter year ahead. That's all from all of us. Thank you for watching. I am Fana Shea. We'll see you next year. Bye.